Alright guys, so as I promised, I got this shit fixed, so now all you guys can hear me and you can hear the music. And today we're working in Dolby ATMOS, so even better for y'all headphone users. We're gonna work on binaural so you can hear everything I'm doing in the Dolby sound field. So we're gonna just be doing a song. I'm not entirely sure what it's called again. It's just some reference tracks I got. I believe the song is out, but I've had the permission to work with it. So I'm just gonna show you usually the things I would do when working in Atmos and some tips and some strategies. So first off, we're gonna take a look at the IO I created. Actually, as a matter of fact, even better view, Dolby Atmos render, and we're gonna take a look at the IO setup. So if you see, for the 7.2 bed, I'm gonna use, I have the LCR set to off, so that's just stereo when down mixed and playing on binaural. The left and right sides are on mid, so it's a little bit more spaced out, and everything else is set to far. That's how I do it. So like Chris Lloyd Algae does, he always talks about, even in stereo, hard left pans, hard right pans, for the other amounts, and the punchy elements like kick and vocals and snare being center. So this is what we usually do. So the kick, I like to place directly in the center channel, and the divergence, I set it to that because I like it only in the center. You don't need to do that, but I do that just to be sure there's no spread at all. For the snare, again, we like that in the center. However, for the snare, I like to elevate that a little bit. So things I like to put in the height channels, I like to put it into an object. So I'm going to put that in an object right there. And I'm going to set the mode to mid. And I'm just going to elevate this, keep this in center, but elevate it to a 20. Now it's a little bit higher, as you can hear. Sounding pretty good. And I'm going to lower this a little bit. And when we have the overhead mics, you're going to hear them. Usually what I like to do is have it left and right. I'm going to add some height to it. So I like to put this a little bit higher, like 75. And usually what I do, even in the Dolby mix, not in the regular mix, just in the Dolby mix, I like to lower it a little more, so by like 2 decibels. So it was at -4 and I'm at -6. And then to glue it down a little better, I like to put usually like a bus compressor on it. Since in Dolby you don't really work with a master bus, you just work with a bus, so putting a normal compressor on it, maybe you wouldn't need that. So usually over here pretty good. I like Greg Price's overheads, and you're gonna hear gluing that down a little bit better. Sounds so much better. Next up is the drums room. This one I like to do something a little different with. Usually room drums. So that's the entire thing. I usually like to put a up mixer on it. Now you're gonna see I'm gonna use the LFE channel because I want some of that kick out. So I'm gonna use actually I'm going to use, I'm not sure where it went. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Oh, I think it's a mono plugin. Okay. So yeah, to mix a mono. Okay. So I'm gonna use the S360 Imager mono /5.1. You're gonna see why when I put that LFE channel in there. I'm gonna turn that. Next up, I'm gonna turn that input gain in until you can't hear it louder than the other elements, but you can just tell it's there. Next, I'm gonna put some spread on it. Get it a little bit more than there. So usually like a 1.85 is a little bit too much. So I'll get it to like a 1.65. Looks pretty good. And we're gonna send some of it to the LFE. So we're gonna bring it down. Gives that kick a little bit of a boost. Another thing in the ATMOS mix, the kick seems to get a little weaker sometimes, so I'm gonna go over to a mix preset that I have. I'm just gonna put on the parallel, like I'm gonna almost parallel compress it, but on the normal track. So I'm gonna set the makeup to 0 for now. And we're gonna bring that up later. For now, the mix, we're gonna set that to 100. What we're looking for is about 2 decibels to 4 decibels of gain reduction, as you can see right here. We're already getting that pretty much, so it's actually pretty rare. Normally you might have to tweak the threshold a little bit. And we're going with a fast attack and a pretty slow release. And then we're gonna drag this mix release down to 0. Put the makeup pretty high, usually like 6.5 works pretty well. And we're gonna bring it up just till we hear a little boost in the kick. Getting too much reduction. So we get that little boost with not actually making it much louder. Another thing is I never really go above 30 on the mix. I mean, unless it works for it, then that happens. Bass. Bass is usually another mono recorded instrument. I usually put that straight center. Don't even really think about it. Now, I'm gonna put another sidechain on it, on the bass, since the elements get a little messed up. So I'm just gonna get a master bus compressor on it, and I'm gonna set a sidechain. I'm gonna go to any bus. In this case, I'll use bus 1. I'm guessing. Take the kick, and I'm gonna send the kick to bus 1. And we're gonna get 0 on it, so it's what the actual audio is. Now we're gonna bring the threshold down a little bit until we're getting just under 2 decibels. And we're gonna work with, usually like on this, there's a medium attack. We're gonna actually work with a little bit faster attack, and we're gonna keep the release pretty slow. Now the kick is shining through that a little bit better. Side chaining works great, and in Dolby works even better. Sometimes you need it. Acoustic guitars. So this is where we get pretty interesting. So this is recorded actually as a stereo. So we're gonna put this on an object. We've already used one of the objects, so we're gonna do it on that. and I'm gonna put it in no group. And for this, I'm gonna put it on a mid setting. So now, usually they like to stay in the front, but with acoustic guitars, I might want to lift them a little bit. That's too much. Dial it down a little bit. Just a little bit lifted. Sounds about right. Next thing, I like to bring it back a little bit. Let's hear it the rest of the mix. So the overheads are pretty loud right there. So if we hear it the full mix, so we're gonna compress them a little more. Anytime that, if let's say we're going for 4 decibels of gain reduction, anytime you want to add more, try double, try 8. If that doesn't work, you can go more. But I usually wouldn't go anywhere past 10 ever, to be honest. Only time you need that is like if you're trying to make something sound really punchy, and that's a different story. Pumped, my fault. Sounds pretty good right there. Okay, so now we have an electric guitar. This is a mono. Okay, so this is electric guitar mic 1. So we're gonna route this to a looks like there's 2 mics, so we're actually gonna make it a pair. Use 13 and 14. Let's go ahead and use 17 and object 18. So we're gonna use these together. And we're going to set it to the far setting. So we're going to bring them both to back here, in the back of the, you're going to hear that. Sounds pretty cool already, but we're going to do another trick. So we're gonna place other things there, but you don't want to take up too much of that space, especially something it's a louder, so it's gonna be more dominant in the mix and therefore more dominant in the stereo field. I mean, no, I'm sorry, the surround field. So we're gonna bring it forward a little bit. And closer into the mix a little more. So I'm thinking with a 75 negative 70 right there on that side, and we can do a negative 70. Wait, I did 75. Okay, so negative 75, negative 75, and we're gonna keep a negative 70. So sounds pretty cool. And another thing, in the Dolby mix, usually the rear elements, you want to turn them down a little bit. So we're just going to make this a group real quick, and I'm going to lower that. Usually I don't like to go down over 2 decibels in any kind of reduction, EQ, automation too much. So we're just going to go down 2 decibels. Another thing is the overheads, I might bring them down a drop too. So I'm going to bring the, actually on this, since we're doing EQ, we already got the EQ levels for the signal level that we have. So we're just going to bring this down. We have a negative 6. Let's try a negative 7.5. Now again, these overheads are just absolutely overtaking the mix. So in Dolby, usually after the stems are already mixed, you don't want to add too much analog sound. So you never really want to use analog equipment or analog emulation plugins. So honestly, just a simple EQ will work. In this case, we're only doing one small cut, so this will work. I'm going to take a high shelf and take it down. So the snare lives in around here. We want the snare to punch through a little bit, so we're going to leave it around a little more right there. Now the Q, we're going to bump it up a little bit. So now we can get a little more reduction while still having that snare. So we're gonna take a listen with it, without it. Snare is barely taken down because we had that little bump right there and we took that down. This works similar to how a Pultec EQ would work anyway, which is what I was planning on using if it wasn't for adding some analog character, which changes the sound of the mix. Another thing is, as you hear the snare sounds a little quiet in this mix, we're going to bring it up. So it's -4. We're going to do it at -3. Sounding pretty good already. Another thing, pretty much already done. The electric guitar 2. So that's another object. We're going to use a object 12 because we didn't have it yet. So I'm going to set this one to a mid setting. I'm going to put it on no group. So I might want to make the sound a little bit wider. What I can do is take it off of a object real quick, and what I'm going to do is going to use DTS's neural to mono to stereo. You can use any mono up mixing plugin. In this case, there's going to be no crossover frequency. And I'm going to limit it just a little bit, around like -4 to begin with. Now we're working in stereo. That's going to make our life easier. So let me just place that in these beds anyway. Not that it really matters when you're using objects, to be honest. I don't believe. So this is a pretty loud guitar to begin with. So what we're going to do is we're going to have yet another SSL compressor, and we're gonna work with Brad Divins' mix one because I like the slow attack and moderate release on it. We're gonna aim for 8 on this. And we're still gonna use a sidechain on it, so we're gonna put it on bus 2 this time. And on the other electric guitars because we don't want them to overpower too much. So we're going to go to bus 2, set it to 0, and we're going to drag this down to the other electric guitar, and we're going to put it on the acoustic guitar, but we're going to turn this down a little bit. We're going to turn it down to -2, so a little bit less into the sidechain. Doesn't seem to be picking up signal, which is kind of strange. So take a look. Oh my god, they're muted. That is my fault. Don't know why the fuck that happened. All right. This time we're going to work with just a mid. And like the other guitars, we're going to elevate it. This also is kind of dependent on what we had for the acoustic guitars over here, since they're kind of playing a similar part. If we're going to look at the acoustic guitar. So we had an elevation of 23. So we're going to place that same elevation on it. And I'm going to compress this a little more. Okay, we have more electric guitars here. We're going to make another pair because they're mono. We're just going to bring these into the sample Ubuntu bed. And I'm going to place it in object 19, object 20 real quick. Okay, so we have that. Take it off of groups. Throw me off. Okay, so we're going to place that same compressor on both of these. So there we go. So I put a little bit of a slower attack, which is basically letting more of that signal level, more of the character to it, the dynamic range. There's louder parts and there's lower parts in it, more of that. So really, ding, really you hear that twangy shit on it. So, I'm not sure how the regular stereo had it, but it doesn't look like it had pans on it. So, we're trying not to make it too obvious in the mix. We're trying to pull it closer into the mix. Again, as you get it closer to here, it's closer to you, it's sounding. I mean, in the front, you want the front to sound louder and heavy front. That means most of the instruments are on the front. We'll hear how that sounds. There's these electric guitars too. We're going to do the complete opposite, actually. And what I mean by that is literally just the same exact, put a far mode on that too as well, actually. Good that it already had that. Because we're going to have this farther back in the mix. And see the pan we had there? We're going to take the same compression. A lot of compressing in Dolby, because sometimes it just makes it too airy. So we're going to have this at a 70 pan. This one actually I have negative 70. And then negative 50. And we're going to hear what that sounds like. It actually sounds pretty cool. So I'll set a 70. And we're going to have this at a negative 50. See how that sounds. So now we can dial back that compression because it has its own space to live in. So we're going to bring it to like a 2.6. That should sound pretty good. Threshold. So I'm going to add a little bit more weight to these drums. Not the overheads. Overheads, we like how they sound. These. to add some more weight to them. I'll bring that up a little bit. So another thing with the kick that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send that to the LFE as well. I'm gonna put it around like a -15 on it. So we can dial that down a little bit. Sounds good. And for these, I think this is a lead Vox. So we have a double track on it. So this is something really cool that we're gonna do with this. So I'm gonna do that in the part 2. So thank you for watching this part. I had to cut the video short. I gotta go do something right now. Apologize. But I'm gonna make a part 2 to this, and we're gonna start off right with that. Do some cool thing with the double track. So thank you for watching.